Have you ever finally found the perfect resale HDB only to be hit with an unexpected demand for $50,000 more than its value? You've done your research, set your budget, and now the seller is asking for an extra $20, $30, and maybe even $50,000 just because they can. At that moment, you might feel frustrated, confused, and even pressured to make a decision. Before you commit to paying that extra cash, let's break this down. In today's video, we are going to uncover why you should never pay for COV blindly, the psychology behind why sellers ask for it, and most importantly, when it might actually make sense to pay. And by the end of this video, you will know exactly when to walk away and when to consider COV as a justifiable part of your purchase. This is not just about whether or not you should pay extra. It's about understanding the most important factor in any property deal, your entry price. That is the real game changer. And if you can get that part right, you can still walk away with a good deal even with COV. Before diving into the reasons why people overpay or avoid COV, it's important to understand what it actually is. In the simplest terms, cash over valuation is the difference between the price a seller is asking for and the official valuation provided by HDB. This valuation is determined based on recent transactions of similar flats in the area, meaning it reflects a fair estimate of what the property is worth. Here is where things get tricky. Unlike your mortgage or CPF savings, COV must be paid in cash. This means no bank will finance it and no government subsidies or grants will help cover it. If you agree to it, that money comes directly out of your pocket. Imagine this. You are buying a flat listed at $550,000 and after going through the process, HDB valuation comes back at $510,000. The extra $40,000 the seller is demanding is pure COV, meaning you must pay that in cash on top of your other costs. At this point, most buyers feel trapped. They've already invested time, emotions, and mental energy into imagining this as their future home. Walking away feels like a painful loss, but paying that extra amount might not sit right either. This is exactly where many people make a mistake. If HDB already provides an official valuation, why do sellers feel entitled to ask for more? The answer lies in human psychology and is something every home buyer needs to be aware of before making an offer. Sellers push for COV because they believe their property holds more value than what the numbers suggest. It could be due to sentimental attachment, a belief that the market is on an upward trend, or simply a desire to profit more from the sale. But beyond that, many sellers and property agents rely on three key tactics to justify their high asking prices. First, they use anchoring bias. When they set an initial asking price that is significantly higher than the market average, buyers feel like any reduction is a good deal, even if it is still overpriced. Secondly, they create a sense of scarcity. You might hear phrases like, "There are other buyers interested," or "This is a rare unit." This plays on the fear of missing out, making you more likely to make an impulsive decision. And finally, there's social proof. If a seller or agent tells you that the prices in this area are rising or everyone is paying COV these days, you might feel like resisting is futile. But the reality is, property prices fluctuate, and just because one buyer paid COV doesn't mean you have to. With all these tactics in play, it's easy to see why so many buyers end up overpaying. The key is knowing when to push back and when a small premium might actually be justified. In most cases, paying COV is unnecessary and may lead to long-term financial regret. There are a few clear indicators that signal when walking away is the smarter choice. If the asking price is significantly above recent transactions for similar units, that's an immediate red flag. One of the best tools at your disposal is HDB's transactions records. Instead of looking at listing prices, which are often inflated, look at the actual sales data to see what buyers have been willing to pay. If a seller is asking for a price much higher than similar units in the same block, they are likely trying to test the market. Another reason to avoid COV is when the unit itself has no unique features that justify the extra cost. If it's a standard mid-floor unit with no renovation, no premium view, and no exceptional location, there's little reason to pay more than the standard valuation. Finally, the worst reason to agree to COV is simply because of fear, or urgency. If you feel pressured to make a decision on the spot or are worried that another buyer might take the unit, take a step back. There are always other flats available. Acting out of panic often leads to overpaying and regret down the line. But with all that said, there are still times when paying COV isn't necessarily a bad move. Let's talk about those exceptions. While the general rule is to avoid COV, there are cases where paying a little extra upfront can still be part of a smart investment. The key is looking beyond just the COV amount and instead evaluating whether the overall entry price is still fair in relation to the property's future value. One situation where paying COV might be worth it is when the flat is in a highly desirable location. If the unit is near an MRT station, top schools, or major upcoming developments, demand will likely remain high. Even if you pay slightly above valuation now, the property's appreciation potential could make up for it in the long run. Another valid reason is if the unit has unique attributes that make it stand out from the others in the area. High floor corner units with unblocked views, rare layouts, or fully renovated interiors can sometimes justify a premium. If a unit saves you tens of thousands in renovation costs or offers a rare features that is hard to find, a reasonable COV might not be a deal breaker. It also makes sense to consider COV if the market data supports it. If recent transactions shows that the prices in the area are steadily rising and your unit is still priced within a reasonable range, then a small cash premium might not be a bad investment. But here's where the most important factor comes in. No matter what the COV is, the entry price must still make sense. Too many buyers get fixated on the COV amount instead of looking at the big picture. What truly matters is whether the total price you are paying aligns with the market trends. Let's say you are looking at two flats in the same block. One has a slightly lower asking price but demands high COV, while the other has a high valuation but no COV. Many people instinctively avoid the first option, but if the total price for that flat is still within a fair market range, it could still be a good deal. On the other hand, a flat that requires no COV but has an inflated valuation might actually be the worst choice. That's why it is crucial to assess the overall price rather than just focusing on whether COV is involved. This brings us to a real-world example of buyers who make smart and poor COV decisions and how you can avoid their mistakes. Let's have a look at two different buyers, one who made a costly mistake and another who turned a COV situation into a smart investment. James was looking for a 5-room resale flat in Tampines. After months of searching, he found a unit that seemed perfect. Mid-floor, standard layout, and located near a popular shopping area. The asking price was $800,000, which seemed reasonable at first. However, when the HDB valuation came in, it was only $720,000, meaning he would have to pay $80,000 in COV. Despite feeling uneasy about the extra cost, James decided to go ahead with the purchase. The seller insisted that the other buyers were interested, and James worried that if he let this unit go, he might not find another one soon. A year later, James would see a listing for a similar flat in the same block. The difference? That unit was being sold at $750,000 with no COV. The market had stabilized and other buyers were able to secure better deals without paying extra cash. James realized that he had overpaid not because the unit was truly worth more, but because he let urgency and fear dictate his decision. Had he waited or negotiated better, he could have saved himself $50,000. Sarah was in the market for an executive apartment in Bukit Panjang. She came across a rare unit, a top floor corner unit with an unblocked park view. The asking price was $720,000 and HDB valuation came back at $690,000, meaning she had to pay $30,000 in COV. At first, Sarah hesitated. She knew she was paying above valuation, but instead of just focusing on the COV, she looked at the bigger picture. She checked recent transactions for similar units and found that most had sold for around $690 to $730. This meant that even with the extra COV, her total purchase price was still within a reasonable range. She also considered other factors. The flat was already renovated and in move-in condition, which saved her an estimated $40,000 in renovation costs. On top of that, the demand for high-floor corner units in her area had been steadily increasing, which meant the likelihood of appreciation was high. Unlike James, Sarah did not make her decision based purely on COV. She focused on whether her entry price was still fair within the market and whether the unit had long-term value. Her decision paid off. The lessons from these two case studies is clear. The key factor is not just the COV amount itself, but whether the total purchase price still makes sense. Before making a decision, ask yourself these three crucial questions. First, how does this price compare to recent transactions in the same area? HDB transaction history is one of the most powerful tools you have as a buyer. Instead of relying on listing prices, which can be inflated, look at actual recorded sales to see what similar units have been sold for. Second, is there a justifiable reason why this unit might be worth more? If the unit has rare features such as unblocked view, a prime location, or significant renovations, there may be a legitimate reason to consider paying a small premium. However, if it is just a standard unit, paying COV simply means overpaying. Thirdly, will this unit hold or increase in value over time? A smart property purchase is not just about the present, but about the future. If you pay a little bit more today for a flat that has a long-term demand and appreciation potential, it may be a wise choice. But if the price is artificially inflated due to short-term trends or seller tactics, it is better to walk away. Once you have answered these questions, you can make an informed decision rather than an emotional one. Many home buyers hear the term COV and immediately assume it's a bad thing. While in most cases it should be avoided, there are times when paying a little extra for the right flat at the right time can be justified. The real issue is not the existence of COV, but whether the overall entry price makes sense. Too often, buyers reject a deal simply because there's COV, but they fail to see that the total price is still within the market value. Others make the mistake of accepting high COV demands without checking if the price is reasonable. At the end of the day, the smartest buyers are those who take a step back, analyze the data, and make decisions based on the facts rather than fear. If the entry price is right and the property has a strong long-term potential, then even a small COV might be worth it. But if the seller is simply overpricing their flat with no real justification, then walking away is the best decision you can make. If you are planning to sell your HDB for the highest value and buy your next flat at a fair value without COV, click the link around this video and join me for a free advisory session.